Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another Skits Tut, and today I came here to bring you a very good one. This is going to be how to make a health bar follow the enemy and stay with the enemy. As you can see that I created a health bar and I put it behind the enemy because that's where I want it to be. You may want it somewhere else, and I'll show you that it's pretty much the same thing no matter what you do. Now ignore the two top health bars and life bar up here. That's for the next video. That's going to be for the player health and player lives, and this is going to be what they call screen space. And what we're going to be doing today is world space. And the difference between those two things is basically the screen space. It's kind of a camera overlay. So imagine this being over your camera view and it stays over your camera. So even when the camera moves, it's going to stay there. Now world space is going to be part of the world, like the player and the enemy. So we can manipulate it to move and we can size it to whatever we want and it'll stay with the enemy. Now to do this, I pretty much went to the enemy and the enemy's object, and I just right clicked and I created a UI and I created a canvas right here. I made this canvas right here. I named it health bar canvas. You can name it whatever you want, no problem. Now for the render mode, right here in the canvas, it starts off default as screen space overlay, and that's what you're seeing with the player health bars. We want the world space for this one. Now it's part of the world, but when you click this, you will not see any changes. So you're going to want to back way up to where the canvas renderer is, and you can kind of see now how the overlay is. This would be your canvas and everything inside of it. This box represents the camera view, so anything inside of here is what will be seen in the game view. Now you'll probably, when you first start, you will want to go ahead and right click the health bar canvas, and you want to create a UI image, and you're going to create an image inside of this canvas. I named it HPBG, which is basically the gold that you see as the background. So that's the image I put in there. You're going to want to click this set native size button inside of the image, and it's going to make it the same exact size as how you designed it. You're going to notice that it's still probably not visible. You're going to want to drag the image into where you see the player, where the game camera view is over here, because now it's in world space. It's no longer an overlay, so you have to actually drag it in here. And what's going to happen is it's going to look huge. It's going to cover up the whole entire camera view, and it's just going to look weird. But fear not. The only thing that you have to do is scale it down, and once you get it to the right size of how you want it, you'll notice that you see these little arrows at the end. These are the anchor points. I like to go ahead and set the anchors, so if we have different screen resolutions, it'll maintain its position where it's at. So once I did that, everything's set up, I right clicked the HPBG and I created another image, and I named it the BG empty. Now the empty is what the bar will look like when it's empty, when there's no health in there, and it's just a black background basically. It's the same shape that you're seeing as this green. It's just gonna overlay. So now that you duplicated it, you're gonna want to drag it and make it a child of the HPBG. And since you duplicated it, it already will start as the native size set, and the anchors will be set. But if you notice, when you drag it and make it a child, you're going to want to reset the anchors. See, if you look outside here, this is the parent's image. So I reset the anchors to fit accordingly there, and I also scaled the image to where it looks like there's a little bit of a rim sticking out. So it kind of makes it look a little unique, gives it a little pop. Now, once again, I right clicked, I went to UI, and I created yet another image. And I named it Filler Red. And then I made it a child of the BG. And now the same anchor points and everything will carry over, so you shouldn't have to worry about having to do that again. But if you do, just make sure that you get that right, because if not, it could make it look weird in different resolutions. So I created a red, a yellow, and a green, and as what we're going to do with this, as you can see, the green, this is when it's full. When the player gets 2/3 of health, he's gonna go turn to yellow, and then when it gets underneath 1/3 of its health bar, it's gonna turn red. So basically is what I did here is I created the filler red first, and I changed the image type from simple to filled. Now what exactly this does is, if you look in the screen on the scene view, you can't see the red because it's not showing. I have to do the green, sorry about that. So you can notice now that it's going down. That's what a filled image is. It's based on a floating point 0 to 1, so that's what's going to determine it. And if you notice, this is called the fill amount, and this is what we access through code in order to change the fill amount for the image. I used the horizontal, but you know, if you go with vertical, if you go with radial 180, 90, or radial 360, they all do different things and they fill differently. And you can also switch from left to right to where it'll just basically empty out the opposite direction. So you have a little customization options right there. They're fun to play with, and I encourage you to do it. I also forgot to tell you is that none of our HP bar images will be a raycast target, so make sure you just go ahead and go back through and just unselect them all. But anyway, I created the red one first so it wouldn't show up, and whichever one you create last will show up on top. So I just did red first, and then once I set up the filled, the horizontal, and set it to left, I pretty much just duplicated it, and I changed the name to yellow, and I put the yellow image in there, and then I duplicated that and I changed the name to green, and once again, so that way you don't have to reset all the settings. They'll always be the same for all three images, and you only have to do it one time, which is very useful. Alright, now let's look at the code that makes it work. I'm using system collections because I'm using an iterating numerator in order to make the health bar appear for a minute when a bullet hits, and then I make it disappear after a couple seconds or so. Unity engine's pretty standard, and then the UI we're going to need for the images. So those are the only things we're going to need for this script. So I've made the HP elements the canvas itself, and this way we can hide it when we don't want it to be visible. We just need a reference to it. I made all these public so it'll actually show on the script, which, by the way, I created the enemy health script and I put it on the canvas itself, So you can see our HP bar elements. There's the header, and you can see that the canvas, I pretty much just drug the canvas in there. The red fill, I used to fill the red, for the yellow, and the green for the green. And that's literally all you had to do for that script, but I did put it on the canvas itself, just so you can know. Now, to set our enemy health, I made it public static so that we can access this from a different script. And we can do our damage like that. So we're not really doing anything with max enemy health. It's going to be born with whatever we assign it here in the start, which is 200 is what I did. And we don't need other scripts to access it. So we're just going to keep this secretive to just this script. I start the canvas off as false so that you can't see the enemy unless we shoot it or unless he detects the player, is the way I set it up. And then I just initialize the enemy HP to whatever value we stored inside of the max enemy health, and he starts off with a full bar every single time. So if we're spawning enemies, when they spawn, they're going to spawn based upon the max enemy health. For the update, I created two functions and I want them to run at all times, and this is just how we're going to check if we need to show the bar. So we access the player detection. If player is detected and it equals true, then we just want to make the canvas show up. So it's going to stay visible as long as the player is detected. Otherwise, if it's false, but we got a player bullet, enemy is hit, is true, then we're going to start the coroutine for bullet hit enemy. And basically that coroutine is just this little small block of code. We're going to set the enemy is hit to false so that this IE numerator only runs one time. Since we're running this in an update, it'll constantly update otherwise. So we set the canvas to be true, then we're going to wait for 3 seconds is how I set it up, and then we're going to turn it back false. So we're going to see the health bar for 3 seconds after the bullet hits, and then it's going to disappear again. So if neither one of these first two are true, then this will always be true. Then we just don't want to see it. So the only time that we want to see the canvas is underneath these two conditions, otherwise hide it. Now updating the UI, it's pretty simple. If the enemy's health is greater than 140, then we want to make sure that the red fill is not showing, the yellow fill is not showing, but we do want to see the green because this is an almost full bar. The green fill amount right here, the fill amount, is how we access the image fill amount. We want it to equal the enemy's health divided by max enemy health, and this will give us a number in between 0 and 1 basically, and that's how the fill amount will be adjusted. It's going to be based upon the health divided by the max enemy, and that's all there is to it. So otherwise, if it's less than or equal to 140, see how it has to be greater than 140? Well, if we did less than 140, the actual number 140 would not be included, so it's less than or equal. So immediately it'll turn yellow if this is true, but it also has to be true that enemy health has to be greater than 80. So this is how you create a range right here. It has to be between 140 and 80 for this to be true. If we would have said or, then that would be exclusive. This is inclusive. Anyway, we want to set the green to false and we want the red to not be visible, but we do want the yellow fill to be true. And it's the same thing with the fill amount. And if it gets less than or equal to 80 and it's greater than 0, then we just set the yellow and red to false and we make the red true. Same thing with the fill. Now, as a fail-safe, if something happens that the enemy health is less than 0, we don't want to see any color in the fill amount. So if there's any problems, we don't want to see an error, so we just set them all to false. And that's literally all there is to it. Now, to see how the player bullet enemy is hit is true, to the player bullet script where it says collision.tag, if it equals enemy, so this is the player bullet hitting something tagged enemy 1, we're going to reduce by 20.5. You can set it however you want. Then we also set enemy hit is true. We're going to destroy the bullet game object that hit that enemy. Now, if enemy health is less than or equal to 0, we want to destroy what the bullet collided with by grabbing its parent game object.